Good evening, and thank you for coming out tonight, and welcome to the Beverly Rogers Carol C. Harder Black Mountain Institute event. With thanks to Colette LaBouffe, Charlotte Wyatt, Kellen Braddock, and the BMI staff for their work to make this happen, and Cities of Asylum writer Ahmed Naji, who co-conspired to invite Iman Mersal to our campus. Please take a moment to silence your cell phones and electronic devices. Two major events are upcoming to cap off this inspiring literary season. Next Thursday, April 27th, the BMI Creative Writing PhD Fellows reading. And on Wednesday, May 3rd, nonfiction writer Sally Denton will read and present from her new book, The Colony. So please mark your calendars. After tonight's reading, there will be time for questions and answers. Books will be available to purchase and author signing through the Writer's Block. Thanks to Nicholas Wagner at the book table for his support. And the event this evening is taking place on the ancestral lands of the Nuwuvi, or Moapa Band of the Southern Paiute people. Everywhere we walk in this part of the world is in their tribal and communal space, never ceded by any treaty or agreement. Let's honor this truth by encouraging engagement and shared stewardship of the land, and active learning about the historical realities of colonialism and of the indigenous peoples who continue to work and live here since time immemorial. Thank you. We are graced this evening by the presence of one of the world's most relevant and most resonant poets, Iman Mersal. I was introduced to her early poems in translations from the Arabic by Libyan-American poet Khaled Mattawa for Words Without Borders, which published a series in 2005 and 6. Then we selected and piloted teaching 3 poems in translation for inclusion in the Egypt unit for Words Without Borders campus, our free public access education site. No other writer anywhere on our site appears 3 times. We found Iman Mersal's poems best covered our themes: friendship, revolution, leaving home. We should add more themes to embrace her poetry: fathers, lovers, emigration, motherhood, and longing. Her new book, The Threshold, translated by Robyn Creswell, now shortlisted for the Griffin Prize, the most prestigious poetry award in Canada, includes 42 poems selected from more than 30 years of Iman Mersal's writing. Iman Mersal was born in the small town of Mit Adlan on the Nile Delta. Her mother died in childbirth when she was 7, and she grew up in the care of her loving but demanding father. Childhood with no trips to the amusement park, as she puts it in an early, heartbreaking poem. Many early poems speak to and negotiate with the authority of the father. We intuit a larger resonance of a young woman declaring her independent voice and seeking freedom within a male-dominated culture, also under the Mubarak dictatorship that repressed dissent to maintain power. She found few Arab women poets to read while growing up. Pardon me. The voice in her poems is consistently skeptical, the voice of an outsider and of resistance, also to traditional forms of a literary culture dominated by influential men: Mahmoud Darwish, Amal Dongol, Adonis, and others. As Angie Mlinko more aptly puts it in her recent feature in the New York Review of Books, quote, "So much of her lyric strength is derived from being the small, overlooked woman in a world built for masculine conquest," unquote. Her poems are written in a newer form, the Arabic prose poem, freer and more anti-establishment than the more traditional metered rhymed verse. She avoids formal or embellished language in favor of conventional speech. It seems obligatory, though no doubt an arrogant Anglo-centric convention, with any cross-cultural work in translation to cite comparisons or influences in English. Iman Mersal does cite them, coming to her through, quote, bad translations in Arabic, unquote. Charles Simic, W.B. Yeats, Emily Dickinson, and later in English, Adrienne Rich, especially diving into the wreck, the poet with the camera. Iman Mersal's poets were not accepted by the largely male literary establishment, nor was her very individual feminism that skirted the edges of political activism. Though she engaged in that too, she edited a feminist literary journal at Mansour University. She resists academic feminist movements, perhaps for being too sourced in Western or Westernized cultures. Much is being written now about her sharply declarative, individualistic feminism. For example, the outspoken way she questions how the left-wing politics of men in her 90s generation became a license for boorish, tired posturing, as is implied in the poem Respect for Marx, which closes, Marx, I'll never forgive him. Or the way she skewers a mansplaining lover and a man decides to explain to me what love is, who dresses and walks out full of himself while she notes only that he leaves his watch on the night table. Or in the priceless lines from A Night at the Theater. If I were Romeo, I'd keep the suicide scene short so as not to hear my wife's snoring. As a male, I recall my own leftist youth and cringe a bit when I read those worthy of my friendship, mentally ticking through the poet's barbed list, lovers of cheap weed and awkward confessions, anti-state agitators, theorists of infidelity, pessimists who keep their hands clean. Teaching Mersal's poem, Sometimes Wisdom Possesses Me, and the lines, I did not hear a revolutionary speak, except to defend his old revolution to a new set of silent listeners. My students agreed they in part express what years after this poem's writing became the great disappointment in the Arab Spring's hope for freedom turned inside out by the repressive dictatorship of the al-Sisi regime in Egypt. By then, Iman Mersal had already married and moved to Canada. She had published 5 books of poetry in Arabic, with numerous poems emerging in translation into English and other languages. Her global reputation keeps growing. She teaches Arabic language and literature at the University of Alberta in Edmonton. She has recently published the English translation of How to Mend, Motherhood and Its Ghosts, essays that interrogate the social and cultural expectations of motherhood. And her work of nonfiction, A Scholarly Journey, won the Sheikh Zayed Book Award in Arabic and will be published next year in English as Traces of Enayat Al-Zayyat. Pardon me if I mispronounce that. A personal narrative that reconstructs the life and times of an Egyptian writer, and her beautiful novel published 4 years after her suicide in the 1960s, The Restoration of a Woman Erased from History. Iman Mersal is also known as a literary activist through her blogs and commentaries. She spread news and international outrage at the imprisonment by the al-Sisi regime of Ahmed Naji for publishing a chapter of his novel. The new in art and writing always challenges, and Iman Mersal keeps raising her distinctive voice in solidarity in her own individual way. There's a lot more to say, but perhaps it's enough to ask that you purchase and read The Threshold and tell me if you agree. She will read tonight in Arabic with translations in English read by her husband, musicologist Dr. Michael Frischkopf. It's Eid today, or is right at sundown, and this will be a gift to us. And because of that, I thought we should give a gift to you. So I wanted to give you a UNLV bag. These are very good for traveling. I actually put my laundry in them and packed them in the suitcase. But it was also the occasion so I could slip a book of mine in there and give it to you discreetly, but I've just outed myself. And I wanted to also give you flowers. So, thank you for being here, and thank you for welcoming Iman Mersal.
Thank you very much. Really kind and generous introduction. All right, everybody. So I'm reading from The Threshold, and it's selection from my work since 1995. So I'll start with some silly poems from my first book. And I'll start actually with respecting Marx, or respect for Marx. This is yours. A little bit further back. So tell me, what do you think? Is this fine now? I was very close to it. Okay, it happens. All right. احترام ماركس. أمام الفاترينات المضيئة المزدهرة بالملابس الداخلية، لا أستطيع أن أمنع نفسي من التفكير في ماركس. احترام ماركس هو الشيء الوحيد المشترك بين أن أحبوني، وسمحت لهم أن يخدشوا بنسب مختلفة عرائس القطن المخبأة في جسدي. ماركس لن أسامحه أبداً.
Respect for Marx. In front of brightly lit windows overflowing with lingerie, I can't stop myself from thinking about Marx. A respect for Karl Marx is the one thing my lovers had in common. I allowed all of them, though to differing extents, to paw at the cotton dolls hidden in my body. Marx, I'll never forgive him.
أمينة. تطلبين البيرة بالتليفون في ثقة امرأة تعرف 3 لغات وتورط الكلمات في سياقات مفاجئة. من أين لك كل هذا الأمان كأنك لم تتركي بيت أبيك أبداً؟ ولماذا لحضورك هذا التخريب الخالي من القصد؟ هذه الوطأة التي تخرج حواسي من عتمتها. وماذا علي عندما تمنحني غرفة الفندق صديقة كاملة تماماً، سوى أن أكور في وجهها سقية تليق بي وخشونة أنتقيها؟ انبهري إذن. أنا عادلة وأترك لك أكثر من نصف هواء الغرفة مقابل أن تريني بدون أشباه. أنت التي تكبرين أمي ب20 عاماً، تلبسين ألواناً مبهجة ولن تشيبي أبداً. صديقتي الكاملة تماماً، لماذا لا تخرجين الآن؟ قد أبشر بدخول الصناديق الرمادية وأنا أجرب أشياءك الأنيقة فعلاً. لماذا لا تخرجين تاركة كل هذا الأكسجين لي؟ قد يدفعني الفراغ الذي خلفك لأن أعض شفتي ندماً وأنا أرى فرشاة أسنانك أليفة ومبللة.
Amina. You order beers on the telephone with the confidence of a woman who speaks 3 languages and ties her words in colorful knots. Where did you get this calm assurance as if you'd never left your father's house? How do you always intimidate without intending to? What is this magnetism that draws me out of myself? And what is it with me that when a hotel room offers me the perfect friend, I hurl in her face my usual vulgarities, the coarseness I'm so fluent in? Go ahead, be shocked. I'm a fair-minded person. I'll give you more than half the air in the room, so long as you see me for what I am. You're 20 years older than my mother and wear bright colors and never go gray. My perfect friend, why don't you get out now? Then I could climb into your silver-colored suitcases and try on your elegant outfits. Why don't you get out and leave all the oxygen to me? The empty space you leave behind might make me bite my lips in regret as I ponder your toothbrush, wet and familiar.
مساء في المسرح. رجل الباص الذي سب السائق لأنه تجاوز البوابة يغني الآن تحت نافذة عالية نحيفاً داخل الشعر المستعار وعيناه أضيق مما أتذكر. كيف وقع في حب جولييت في أقل من ساعة، بينما زوجته التي أخبرت الجميع أنها زوجته تقاوم النعاس في الصف الأمامي في انتظار النهاية. جولييت ولدت في زمن بعيد، حزينة بمساعدة الإضاءة الخافتة وفستانها أبيض، ثم إنها ستموت بعد دقائق. لماذا لا يبتعد حامل العدسة عن جسد الميتة؟ بهذه الطريقة سيظهر على الشاشة اضطراب التنفس. أفراد العائلتين يخلعون الآن ملابسهم الثقيلة والخناجر ويبحثون عن البناطيل والساعات، وقد يذهب بعضهم للحمام قبل تحية الجمهور. لو كنت مكان روميو لاختصرت مشهد الانتحار حتى لا أسمع من هنا شخير الزوجة.
A night at the theater. The man on the bus who cursed our driver for missing his stop now sings under a lofty balcony, looking skinny in his fake hair. His eyes are smaller than I remember. How did he fall in love with Juliet in less than an hour, while his own wife, she let everyone know she was his wife, fights off yawns in the front row and waits for the play to end? Juliet was born a very long time ago. With some help from the stage lights and her white dress, she looks sad, and indeed, we all know she's about to die. Why doesn't the cameraman take a step back from the body? The way he's doing it, everyone will see how hard she's trying not to breathe. Now members of the two households remove their stiff costumes, put away their daggers, and hunt for trousers and watches. Some will dash to the bathroom before going out to take their bows. If I were Romeo, I'd keep the suicide scene short so as not to hear my wife snoring.
أصابع سوداء. أن تتزوجي عازف بيانو. Sorry, my husband is a musician, so I think this first line is about him. And this is our second time in our 28 years that he read with me, second time, so it's a little odd for me. Yeah. So, but you are doing well so far. أصابع سوداء. أن تتزوجي عازف بيانو سيظل مختلفاً عن زواجك بحاراً. جميعهم يعرفون ذلك، حيث لن يروك مرة أخرى في ميناء. والصورة الأخيرة التي ستظهرين عليها ستكون لكائن مشنوق نسى أصابعه فوق عينيه، بينما قدماه الشاحبتان على مسافة أميال من السلم الموسيقي. قالت الجدة: الفرخ الحائر للحدقة. قال الأب: لا تكلمي الغرباء. قال الأستاذ: الشرق شرق والغرب غرب. قال صديق المقهى: الهجرة خطأ لا يصححه إلا الاستمرار فيه. قال الطبيب: أنت حامل. يقول الطبيب: أنت حامل. تقولين: لا، أنا حبلى. ليس لأن الصفة تنقصها تاء التأنيث، ليس لأن اللغة العربية غير عادلة، لكن لأن حبلى هي الكلمة التي تجعلك ممتلئة بنفسك. أنت حبلى إذن.
Black fingers. Marrying a piano player isn't like marrying a sailor, something they all appreciate. They'll never have to see you waiting at the port. Instead, their last image of you will be of a creature dangling from a rope, fingers splayed over her eyes while her thin feet hang miles away from the musical scales. The grandmother said, "Silly chicks are food for hawks." The father said, "Don't talk to strangers." The professor said, "East is east and west is west." The friend from the cafe said, "Leaving your homeland is a mistake that can only be fixed by never looking back." The doctor said, "You're expecting." The doctor says you're expecting, and you say, "No, I'm pregnant." Not because it's more feminine, and not because words are always unfair, but because pregnant is a word that feels full of itself, which is exactly what you are.
I'll jump to alternative geography. Where did you come? So, poem number. Perfect. So, this was actually, I read few sections from a long poem entitled Alternative Geography, and it was my first poem to resume, to go back to writing after 5 years without writing anything in Canada, and it's understood, I think, why. So, so لماذا جاءت إلى البلاد الجديدة هذه المومياء موضوع الفرجة؟ تركض بزينتها في كتان رمادي، حياة متخيلة في فاترينة متحف. أظن أن التحنيط مسألة ضد الخلود، لأن الجسد لن يكون أبداً جزءاً من وردة. المومياء لم تختر هجرتها، بينما هؤلاء الذين انتظروا طويلاً في طوابير السفارات وبنوا بيوتاً في بلاد أخرى يحلمون بالعودة عندما يصبحون جثثاً. يجب أن تحملونا إلى هناك، هكذا يتركون الوصايا في أعناق أولادهم، كأن الموت هوية ناقصة لا تكتمل إلا في مقبرة الأسرة.
Why did she come? Why did she come to the New World, this mummy, this curiosity, lying in state in her dusty linen, stuffed with life behind the museum's glass? Maybe mummification is the opposite of immortality, since no mummy will ever give life to a rose. The mummy didn't choose to emigrate, unlike those who wait on long lines in embassies, build homes in foreign countries, and dream of returning once they've turned into corpses. You must take us back, is the legacy they hang around their children's necks, as if death were an identity that can't be claimed until you're in the family plot.
هنا أيضاً أشجار خضراء تقف تحت ضغط الثلج، وأنهار لا يتعانق بجانبها عشاق خلسة، بل يجري بموازاتها رياضيون مع كلابهم في صباح الأحد، دون أن ينتبهوا للمياه التي تجمدت من الوحدة. ومهاجرون لم يتدربوا على محبة الطبيعة، ولكنهم يصدقون أن نسبة التلوث أقل، وأن بإمكانهم إطالة أعمارهم بمضغ الأكسجين قبل النوم عبر كبسولات هوائية.
Here too there are green trees, stooped under the weight of snow, and also rivers, though no lovers embrace on their banks, thronged instead on Sunday mornings by joggers and their dogs, who never pause to look at the water rigid with loneliness, and immigrants unschooled as nature lovers, but convinced that pollution levels are lower here, and that chewing gelatin capsules of oxygen before bed will lead to a longer life.
لماذا لم ينسوا أنهم من هناك الغرباء الفشلة؟ يدربون عضلات أفواههم على التخلص من اللكنة. اللكنة هي المرض الوراثي الشفاف الذي يفضحهم، يقفز عندما يغضبون فينسون كيف يضعون أحزانهم في لغة أجنبية. اللكنة لا تموت، ولكن الغرباء حفار قبور بجدارة، يعلقون على باب الثلاجة أسماء من ماتوا من الأهل حتى لا يخطئوا ويطلبوهم في التليفون، ويدفعون ربع أجورهم لشركات الاتصال ليتأكدوا أنهم موجودون في مكان يمكن تحديده ببعده عن الطفولة. لماذا لم ينسوا؟
Why can't they forget they're from there? These wretched outsiders training their mouth muscles to disguise their accents, accents like inherited diseases, exposing them as soon as they get angry and forget how to express their griefs in a foreign tongue. Accents don't die, but immigrants are good gravediggers. They hang the names of dead family on the fridge so as not to telephone them by mistake, and they pay a quarter of their salary on phone bills to prove they live in a place very far from their childhood. Why can't they forget?
I'll read the last section of this poem. في قارة أخرى تركت أعداء مساكين، يجب أن تخجل من نفسك عندما تتذكرهم. لا شيء يغضبك الآن، من الصعب أن تقابل شيوعياً كلاسيكياً هنا، حتى أنهم يضعون ساعة في المكاتب العمومية بدلاً من صورة الرئيس. ربما يكون كابوساً أن تقضي يوماً كهذا تحت تأثير المهدئات. لا شيء جدير بأن تتمرد عليه. أنت مرضي وميت، والحياة من حولك تبدو مثل يد رحيمة أضاءت الغرفة لعجوز أعمى ليتمكن من قراءة الماضي.
You left your poor enemies on another continent and feel ashamed whenever you think of them. Nothing makes you angry anymore. It's hard to meet a classical communist here, where clocks hang in government offices rather than pictures of the president. Perhaps these days of sedation are the real nightmare. Nothing here deserves your rebellion. You are content and you are dead. The life around you is like the hand of mercy turning up the room lights for an old blind man so he can read the past.
CV. CV. تبويب صارم للشهيق، سنوات على الشاشة، الشهادات قبل الوظائف، واللغات بكل عذابها تحت خانة اللغات. أين ذهبت كل تلك الأيام الضائعة؟ تجريب العمى، هلاوس تخب على جدران الغرفة. أين الذنوب والحزن المفاجئ أمام تل من الفاكهة على عربة يد في شارع منسي؟ سنوات بلا انتظار ولا جنازات، خالية من الإحباط المقرف، من قدم الأظافر، ومن نسيان مفتاح البيت داخل البيت. ليس فيها حتى نافذة واحدة مفتوحة، ولا رغبة مؤجلة في القفز إلى الغياب. حياة متخمة بالإنجازات، مغسولة من عك الحياة نفسها، كدليل قاطع على أن صاحبها طمس أخيراً علاقته بالطين.
CV. A ruthless catalog of sorrows. Years in front of the screen, diplomas before jobs, and languages. All that torture now ranged under languages. Where are all the wasted days and the nights of walking with hands stretched out and the visions that crept over the walls? Where are the feelings of guilt and the sudden sadness faced with a little hill of fruit atop a handcart in some forgotten street? Years with no mention of the empty hours or the funerals, expunged of black depressions and nibbled nails. The house keys forgotten inside the house. There isn't a single opened window, and no trace of the desire deferred to leap out. A life overstuffed with accomplishments, scrubbed free of dirt. Proof that the one who lived it has cut all ties to the earth.
We can احتفال maybe. احتفال. وقع خيط القصة في الأرض فنزلت على ركبتي أبحث عنه. كان هناك ذلك الاحتفال الوطني، ولم أرى إلا الأحذية المستوردة والبيادات. على مقعد في قطار قالت لي أفغانية لم ترى أفغانستان الانتصار ممكن. تمنيت يومها لو سألتها هل هذه نبوءة؟ بدت تهتهتي بالفارسية كأنها خارجة من كتاب المبتدئين، وهي كأنها تلتقطها من خزانة ملابس قتل صاحبها في حريق. لنفرض أن الشعب وصل عن بكرة أبيه إلى الميدان، أن الشعب ليس كلمة قبيحة، كما أن لا أحد يعرف ما معنى بكرة أبيه. إذن كيف حضرت كل هذه الكلاب البوليسية إلى هنا، ومن غطى وجوهها بأقنعة ملونة؟ الأهم من ذلك، أين سقط الخيط الذي يفصل بين الأعلام والملابس الداخلية، بين الأناشيد والنشيج، بين الله وكائناته التي تمشي على الأرض لترفع الضرائب؟ الاحتفال، كأنني لم أنطق هذه الكلمة من قبل، كأنها خرجت لتوها من قاموس إغريقي، حيث رجع أهالي سبارتا منتصرين إلى سبارتا، ولم يجف دم الفرس على التروس والرماح. ربما لم يكن هناك قطار ولا نبوءة ولا أفغانية جلست أمامي لساعتين. أن الله يضلل ذاكرة مخلوقاته من وقت لآخر ليتسلى، ولكن المؤكد أنني من موقعي هنا بين الأحذية والبيادات لن أعرف من بالضبط انتصر على من.
A celebration. The thread of the story fell to the ground, so I went down on my hands and knees to hunt for it. This was at one of those patriotic celebrations, and all I saw were imported shoes and jackboots. Once, on a train, an Afghan woman who had never seen Afghanistan said to me, "Triumph is possible." Is that a prophecy? I wanted to ask. But my Persian was straight from a beginner's textbook, and she looked while listening to me as though she were picking through a wardrobe whose owner died in a fire. Let's assume the people who arrived en masse at the square. Let's assume the people isn't a dirty word and that we know the meaning of en masse. Then how did all these police dogs get here? Who fitted them with party-colored masks? More important, where's the line between flags and lingerie, anthems and anathemas, God and his creations, the ones put on earth to pay taxes? Celebration. As if I'd never truly said the word before, as if it came from a Greek lexicon in which triumphant Spartans march home with Persian blood still wet on their spears and shields. Perhaps there was no train, no prophecy, no Afghan woman sitting across from me for 2 hours. At times, for his own amusement, God leads our memories astray. What I can say is that from down here, among the shoes and jackboots, I'll never know for certain who triumphed over whom.
My last poem, for the night, I hope, not forever. فكرة البيوت. بعت أقراطي في محل الذهب لأشتري خاتما من سوق الفضة. استبدلته بحبر قديم وكراسة أسودة. حدث ذلك قبل أن أنسى الصفحات على مقعد قطار كان من المفروض أن يوصلني إلى البيت. وكان كلما وصلت إلى مدينة بدا لي أن بيتي في مدينة أخرى. تقول أولغا من دون أن أحكي لها ما سبق: البيت لا يصبح بيتاً إلا لحظة بيعه. تكتشف احتمالات حديقته وغرفه الواسعة في عيون السمسار. تحتفظ بكوابيسك تحت السقف نفسه لنفسك، وسيكون عليك أن تخرج بها في حقيبة أو 2 على أحسن الفروض. أولغا تصمت فجأة ثم تبتسم مثل ملكة تتباسط مع رعاياها بين ماكينة القهوة في مطبخها وشباك يطل على زهور. زوج أولغا لم يرى مشهد الملكة، وربما لهذا لا يزال يظن أن البيت هو الصديق الوفي عندما يصبح أعمى. أركانه تحفظ خطواته، وسلماته ستحميه برحمتها من السقوط في العتمة. أبحث عن مفتاح يضيع دائما في قعر الحقيبة، حيث لا تراني أولغا ولا زوجها، حيث أتدرب في الحقيقة حتى أتخلى عن فكرة البيوت. كل مرة تعود إليه وتراب العالم على أطراف أصابعك، تحشر ما استطعت حمله في خزائنه. مع ذلك ترفض أن تعرف البيت بأنه مستقبل الكراكيب، حيث أشياء ميتة كانت قد بدت في لحظة ما تفاوضا مع الأمل. ليكن البيت هو المكان الذي لا تلاحظ البتة إضاءته السيئة، جدار تتسع شروخه حتى تظنها يوما بديلا للأبواب.
The idea of home. I sold my earrings at the gold store to buy a silver ring in the market. I swapped that for old ink and a black notebook. This was before I forgot my pages on the seat of a train that was supposed to take me home. Whenever I arrived in a city, I felt my home was in a different one. Olga says, without having told her any of this, your home is never really home until you sell it. Then you discover all the things you could do with the garden and the large rooms, like you're seeing it through the eyes of a broker. You stored all your nightmares in the attic. Now you have to pack them in a suitcase or two. Olga falls silent, then suddenly smiles, a monarch among her subjects, there in the kitchen between her coffee machine and a window with a view of flowers. Olga's husband wasn't there to witness this queenly speech. Maybe that's why he still thinks the house will be a loyal friend even when he loses his sight, a house whose foundations will hold steady, whose stairs will mercifully protect him from falls in the dark. I'm digging around for a key that always gets lost in the bottom of my handbag, here where neither Olga nor her husband can see me, training myself in reality so I can give up the idea of home. Every time you go back home with the dirt of the world under your nails, you stuff everything you could carry with you into its closets. but you refuse to define home as the resting place of junk, as a place where these dead things were once confused with hope. Let home be that place where you never notice the bad lighting. Let it be a wall whose cracks keep growing until one day you take them for doors.
Thank you. Thank you.